I'm wondering, given how you're out and about, let's just put it that way, you're meeting lots of people globally, do you find that you're a sort of an ambassador for all of Africa, or how do you differentiate? I know Nigeria is where you're from, and that, but a lot of people you talk to are very unfamiliar with Africa as a destination in general. So how do you navigate that path?
This notion that Africa is one country, right? Africa is different countries. We have our different strengths and weaknesses, but of course there are collective strengths, right? Yes, I've been talking regarding employment in Africa. I'm actually an ambassador. I see myself as an ambassador for Africa, West Africa, and Nigeria, which is a country that is really dear to my heart. So employment creation, Africa has a population of 1.3 billion again. And this population, 60% youth, right, under the age of 25, right? Literacy rate in Africa is averaging at 79%. So this is where the industry should be. This is where it's heading to because of that scale. And that scale comes with quality. There's a notion that quality is not there in Africa. It has changed from where it has started, and it has really moved, So we're going to talk about that. So there's a lot of research. I mean, based on the last, Peter Ryan is here, Makangas, they've all been researching about giving us data about Africa. Based on the last Ryan advisory survey, omnibus survey, both about how many African countries came up. South Africa is among the first 5. Egypt is also among the first 5. So you see a lot of bias, confidence in Africa is really building up.
We often end up in this conference, have this conversation of what more nearshore could be. Now, Mexico is a superstar. What more we could be if Mexico performed as a superstar. And we saw a glimpse of that back, I think the pro-Mexico days when that was happening. And, so tell me what you think about these things. We know this industry is going to survive, but does it achieve the heights it could achieve?
I think it has to do with several factors. Each country has been in a different phase of evolution from a nearshoring or services perspective. It's what I call the maturity level. So, for example, a proven model is Costa Rica. Costa Rica has been there, done that. They already reach a particular level of maturity. Mexico is there. Then you have El Salvador, Honduras, where you can see the changes, for example, in El Salvador with the change of president. All of a sudden became instead of one of the unsafest country in the world, it moved radically in months by doing practical things that may be discussed in another kind of discussions. But you can see how immediately that shifted a change in several factors that actually influenced our businesses. It has to do with the willingness of the government to invest in education. But it's not only in education, but in the willingness of having several languages, not just the local one. Then it's the benefits that most governments do to do these kind of services. So, for example, in Costa Rica, you have the free trade zones where you don't pay taxes over your assets. Then you have Uruguay, where you have another kind of benefits that are a lot better. Colombia did the same thing. But then if the governments, especially the ones on the left, and I want to make a disclaimer, I'm not in favor or against, it's just Arturo Velasco perspective, are not necessarily open to this kind of investments because their speech is to try to protect the local things, right? If we speak Spanish, why do we need to teach English? It's something that I heard.
Insular.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I believe that we as leaders and potential investors need to be careful of where we're making our decisions on how and where we need to go because we need to have full context. If the industry is mature enough, it will be like your cockroach analogy. Yes, we will survive. But if you're going to a country that's in a phase that it's a little more in the beginning or investment phase and you don't have that kind of support, or openness from the government, it will be very hard.
Well,
Because governments can actually change that. And that's one of the fears that we have right now in Mexico. A president that was very populist all the way to the left. And then all of a sudden, a new president wants that actually was his protege. So, you can perceive that there was not a lot of willingness to do international things, just the local. So it raises the potential risk. And you can see peso against dollar was very strong for the past 4 years. In 2 days, it lost 20%. Just because of an argument that we will do certain things in the court.
it's weakening again.
Yeah, it's weakening again.
Okay.
But it lost in 3 days what it hasn't lost in 4 years. So all those factors
It definitely affects. Great point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we need to be very vigilant. And I'm not saying not invest in Mexico. Absolutely. I mean, the industry is very mature, the same in Central America, but we just need to be careful and very conscious about these decisions that may shift things a little bit to some direction.
When I went to grad school for moving away from engineering and decided to do development, my focus was on economic and political development. So the fact that political is in that statement completely answers your question. It just has to be considered. And I was in Colombia when that president was in power and experienced some of the English training that was happening with the youth that were coming back into the fold, into the mainstream. It does always have an impact. And I think about even in the United States, and in fact, I think this is all the other part of political is that all politics is local. If you look at what's happening in local communities politically and how they're investing in economic development, I don't know if it's fair to call small towns or sort of forgotten parts of America as nearshore, but let me stretch the concept a little bit. I got to visit a border town, Texas and Mexico border, where an Indian company has decided to start their facilities. They expanded to Austin, and they found that a bunch of the applications that they were getting for techies was coming from this border town. And I'm like, why should we make these people move? Let's go to the border town. And they opened up a facility. And to kick off that facility, they had the mayor of that town and the head of the Economic Development Corporation. So I think there's a positive that politics can have, but it is all about like that, the tone that's getting set. And so if the tone is about growth, about education, I think about a lot of the changes that are happening in India. And one of the issues that keeps getting highlighted is that there's the inequity in India has grown. Even though overall there's a lot of people that have been taken out of poverty, there's a lot of economic growth and probably growth that we would love to see in all the countries that we're in, but it's still not enough to deal with the inequality. And so that could potentially be a risk, right? Because that's the community that's getting lifted to come into the BPO and ITS industry.
It would be good for our audience to understand your agency that you're a part of and how that interconnects with the bigger vision you have.
A lot of African governments are creating a lot of initiative to really support the industry. And let me just talk about what Nigeria is doing. So what we've done is we looked at the positioning of the country and we looked at the perception, because business is all about the perception, right? And in fact, the entire continent is suffering because of the perception that people have regarding Africa. So we looked at Nigeria, we narrowed it down to say, what is the perception of bias in our country? And we created a program, an initiative called Outsource to Nigeria Initiative. One area of the initiative is to upskill our existing graduates. So when graduates come out of school, they're not ready to go to work immediately. So how do we upskill them in such a way that buyers would directly take them for product training? So we are upscaling. We currently launched the program 5th of March, and we did a pilot with 500 people, and today 114 of them are already outsourced, right, in just 2 months. So the second pillar is people do not want to invest in Africa and Nigeria, right, most especially. So if BPOs are coming into the country, they would be thinking, I don't want to risk investing in this country. So what we've done is we are creating centers of excellence. And these centers of excellence would allow BPOs and other companies that want to outsource to Africa come in through the initiative. If you don't want to set up an entity in Nigeria, it's fine. You come in through the initiative, you take as many seats as you want in the centers of excellence. We'll provide all the infrastructure, the computers, the systems, and everything, and you just take as many seats and run your show. All we do, as the initiative will do, is handle payroll on your behalf. And that way, the risk is tremendously reduced to almost level 1 or 0, right? So that's really what we've done, and we're trying to really work with different partners to promote this.
What's interesting about you, if you don't mind me sharing, I was at a conference recently with Amal. We were sitting there talking about profit, and Amal was transparent enough to say, well, this is our profit. It wasn't mind-blowing. And this other guy who was at the table, he's like, oh my God, why aren't you trying to make more money? And it was an interesting thing. I was like, wow, is that what that guy's mostly concerned about? Is that what are we concerned about making money, or are we concerned about changing the world? Now you're somebody who, tell us what drives you personally.
I started my first business with an IT training center. And at the time that I was telling Rita that story, even though she's a very good friend of mine, but we never got to share that story. And we trained a lot of IT professionals in where I'm from, Kano, northern Nigeria. After training a lot of IT professionals, I realized that I'm not doing anything to their lives. They come in, they get trained in various IT courses, and they go back into the market without a job. And I started researching on what I could do to create employment. I was dealing with a lot of Indians. I stumbled on BPO, and really I realized that it created millions of jobs to Indians. And I said, why not Nigeria? We have very good English-speaking people. I'm a Nigerian. I schooled there. I was born and brought up there, and I speak like this, right? We graduate 1 million graduates every year. According to World Bank, 3 million people get to the work age, labor market every year. Right? So how many companies do we have in Nigeria that can absorb these people? BPO is. So my passion since then has been, how do we create employment?
Cool.
And that's really more important than how much profit I'm going to make.
Mexico's got obviously a very tiered economic situation. And having been in this industry so long, what do you think on a personal level in order to get those kind of impact level workers into this industry? Do you have observations about that?
I think one of the things that I've seen through my career in all the companies that I work for and all the customers that I have is that something that we need to have is responsibility where we work. I mean, where you're investing. I do encourage everyone to, if you're investing in any place in the world, that you need to be just not getting profit or the benefit of a particular business situation that allows you to be profitable, but it's how you return to that place in order to make it sustainable over time. So most of the companies that I work with have these programs that maybe they don't make a lot of noise about this kind of recruitment, but there's a lot of proximity with the community. In HP in Costa Rica, I remember that going to the places where there were no computers, where there were no internet, and actually making sure that you have the infrastructure, you give them the equipment, you expose kids to other situations. And something that I learned that marked me personally is that when I was talking in one of those places with the kids and the computers, and the person in charge of that showed me that the future of a kid is defined of what they see in their surroundings. So if the kid only see that the most important people in their communities that want fixing the car, they want to be mechanics. But if you give them internet and you show them how far they can go, their dreams change. In those kind of things actually marked me personally, and I saw the importance of actually giving back. And it won't be not making your business profitable. It's what you return to those places, regardless of where they are, and it makes a difference. Other companies in Mexico struggle with English. Especially, and I want to make that separation, BPO and IT services is not the same to find someone that helps us without diminishing the roles of anyone. But it's easier to find someone to do accounts receivable than someone that programs in Salesforce. We're talking about radically different things, and there's big challenges where you're talking about technology. But a lot of other things that also I've seen, and the proximity to the government is important. By the way, what I mentioned is I'm not only looking at the dark side. There's a lot of positives that you can do with your government. So working closely with them is how you push them into making more things in the benefit of the country by helping. Examples like that is we will teach English even if people doesn't know. We define a process where you can bring people, and if they don't have the right level of English, you will invest in them. It will take you a little bit longer, but that creates sense of belonging.
Mm-hmm.
People will stay with you because they see that you're willing to invest in their future. So instead of just competing of the people that is fully bilingual and have of the knowledge, you make some risk by bringing people that maybe you need to teach them English. Or something that I learned in Google, for example, people will say Google hire only the geniuses. Well, yes, they have one of the most smart engineers in the world. But Google, in that moment, I remember we were hiring for your attitude against things, your willingness to challenge the status quo. Because you can teach technology. But sometimes what you cannot teach is this willingness of making more and learning and all that stuff. So to your point, if you're helping all these people, you will absolutely reduce your rotation. I can guarantee you that your attrition, but it will require a little more effort and it will require a little more time. Mm-hmm. But I've seen that work, and the story of Costa Rica is something that you already know. HP started, and it started with 100, then 1,000, then 2,000, then 3,000. We end being 8,000 people in a city of 1 million. And it was a story that had to do not only with how much you were getting from the market, but how much we were returning in order to make this cycle of benefits to everyone.
I want to add to that because some of those very large companies that are already doing a lot of good, just like you described, they're also demanding good from their providers. One of them told me that they are putting an SLA into their contract that eventually within a certain time frame, 20% of the FTEs that work with them will be impact workers. 20%. That's huge.
Yeah.
Right now, we think that there's about 420 to 450,000 impact workers globally. We do think that number could be a lot bigger. It will get a lot bigger when contracts like that 20% requirement go in. And even if the overall CX market gets smaller in terms of numbers of people, we're actually expecting the impact sourcing number to go up because that's the shift. They want to be socially responsible.